next to him. A soldier decapitates him, and his skull rolls to her corpse. Hoping he could have been stronger and wishing for a second chance, the skull rolls and bites a soldier on the foot before being smashed. As all fades to black, assimilation rate decreases to 94.8%. The skeleton muses on his failure and wishes to rest, being disturbed by an ever louder sound before waking up inside of a coffin in a forest. As he starts to recognize the place, a blue status window pops up, informing that the inheritance is complete, making him a level 1 skeleton with the stats of a level 36, with no name. His thoughts are interrupted by a woman named Rubia claiming she had woken him, and realizing it is the same woman who made him into a skeleton soldier 20 years ago. He realizes he is back to when he first rose. He knows Rubia will soon be killed by bandits, and after some thought, remembering his dead master, he decides to save her and carries her away, finding no point in living if he can't even protect her. A scenario window appears, displaying information on Rubia just before 2 horsemen approach, prompting No Name and Rubia to hide. One wields a crossbow and the second a great hammer. And No Name realizes they weren't random bandits, but the mercenaries hunting Rubia. After they pass, Rubia starts to explain who she is before being shot by the crossbowman. As the Great Hammer user approaches Rubia, No Name strikes him in the head with a rock, but the man recovers and deals him a crushing blow to the skull with his hammer, causing him to die again and fail at protecting Rubia. He then wakes up again in the coffin, while Rubia announces herself, much to his confusion. No Name has been raised again with his memories intact, and now faces a memorial window, offering him a bonus of 20+ goodwill with necromancers or 40+ blunt resistance. Choosing the latter, he tells a surprised Rubia to hide before the mercenaries arrive, causing her to wonder how he can talk and know this. He then asks for her dagger and vows to protect her as she hides. The mercenaries approach and spread to search for Rubia, and No Name is able to ambush and kill the unassuming crossbowman, leveling up before being smashed in the skull by the Great Hammer user. Though the damage was mitigated by the bonus, it was still too much. The mercenary wonders if there was a dungeon nearby and proceeds to smash No Name to dust, killing him a second time. As No Name rises again, he applies the points he gained from killing the crossbowman to raise his agility. In his third life, he manages to kill the Great Hammer, but he was killed by the crossbowman. Finally, having gained more experience and levels, he is able to overcome and kill both mercenaries in his 4th life, succeeding in protecting Rubia after 3 deaths. As he walks with Rubia in a cave, No Name recaps his situation internally. Every time he dies, he goes back to when he was first summoned, starting at level 1 but retaining his skills and stats and receiving a memorial bonus. And if he experienced something different in his previous life, he gets a new ability. However, he doesn't know how many more times he can revive. Rubia pulls him from his thoughts, explaining that she is the daughter of Lord Ray, an honest and principled man who resisted the new changes imposed by the newly ascended, warmongering king. For this, he was assassinated, leaving Rubia orphaned. No Name recalls that the king will soon launch a massive 9-year-long war to unite all the lands under his rule, followed soon after by the resurrection of the 16 devils. He lacks the power to stop this war, but at least he can protect this girl who's been caught in the middle, though he must become stronger in order to do that, and one day meet his mistress. They agree that they should get to a village and emerge into the mountains. Though Rubia attempts to play with him, No Name points out that skeletons are usually emotionless. They are headed to Ublam, and Rubia suggests buying armor there to hide No Name's nature in order to avoid panicking the humans. She is then saved from slipping to her death, being glad at having No Name there to protect her. After crossing the mountains, they finally reach Ublam, and Rubia decides to enter the town alone while No Name waits outside in order to avoid scaring anyone. She reassures him about her safety and promises to return soon. No Name waits patiently for 3 days wondering about her, and on the 3rd day, a door opens as an old man emerges from the castle with a wheelbarrow and dumps something. Memories of his time with Rubia flash through No Name's mind as he approaches her beaten corpse. Looking down at Rubia's corpse, No Name laments failing to protect her as he hears 2 men approaching. They were Rubia's jailers, and state that she committed suicide before they could sell her, causing their superior to beat one of them. One of them departs while the other searches for the corpse, dropping his sword once he finds it and promptly being stabbed from behind with the blade by No Name before he can do anything else. When questioned, the man reveals that the owner of the inn brought the girl to them, and they were following orders from the leader of the guards, after which No Name runs him through. Closing Rubia's eyes, he decides to look for the owner of the inn. That night, No Name approaches the inn, his body covered by a cloak, and kicks the owner inside. Cowering, the man yells that he doesn't know anything regarding the 2 dead organization members who had been sent after the daughter of the Lord of Erst, as he confused No Name with someone else. No Name then informs him about Rubia's fate and interrogates him as to its cause, stabbing him through the thigh before he can escape. Terrified, the innkeeper states that he merely handed the girl over to the guards, unaware of what would happen, because the leader of the guards has to give girls over to the Necron Society to use as slaves. Before he can say anything about the society, the snake tattoo in his neck comes alive and strangles him. And No Name concludes that there must be something going on between the Necron Society and the Ublam guards. Knowing he must become stronger and remembering Rubia's advice, he dons a suit of purple plate armor. Determined not to lose anyone else, he departs. No Name slices through another skeleton soldier as he enters the Spectre's Charnel House dungeon. It's a small dungeon, and upon realizing that it has fellow skeletons, he removes his helmet and attempts in vain to connect with them, thinking on how pitiful it is to be unable to talk. As he's about to depart, an alert window pops up informing him of the incoming dungeon boss, and he turns around to see a giant, horned skeleton armed with a war mace. The boss smashes one of the dungeon skeletons and beckons the rest to attack No Name, who dons his helmet and engages in combat. He easily dispatches the minor skeletons, dodging the boss's attacks and shattering one of his legs before taking a hit. Knowing of a skeleton's weak points, he then rushes and clambers atop the boss's skull, thrusting his sword and delivering a killing blow. This kill leveled up No Name 5 times and caused a quest window to pop up promising a level 1 swordsmanship for swinging his sword 10,000 times. He reasons that, not having to eat or sleep, he can complete that quest easily, and decides to use the now vacant dungeon as his training ground. Outside the dungeon, a portly knight approaches accompanied by 2 beautiful women, one red-headed and another blonde. No Name continues to swing his sword, managing to raise his count considerably, when an alert window pops up and informs him of the presence of intruders. The portly knight boasts of his power to his female companions, with the redhead playing dumb as he shows her a bag full of expensive healing potions. She is clearly playing the knight, while the blonde woman muses on the situation, concluding that the knight has valuables and the redhead is just trying to get closer because of it. The blonde, whose name is Rena, plans to use the distraction of the monsters to kill and rob the knight. But as she leads him on, the redhead points out that being an adventurer, Rena should take point and do reconnaissance, much to her annoyance. The knight attempts to break the argument, while inwardly lamenting that the dungeon only has weak skeletons and hoping to face a more resilient boss in order to show his cool side and get lucky with both women. Both of these women then point out they should have encountered skeletons by now, which the knight brushes off while inwardly wondering the same thing, until they stumble on the deceased boss and soldier skeletons. The knight is shocked at finding it dead, and just as a frustrated Rena is about to stab him in the back, they are surprised by No Name advancing in full armor. The knight confronts him and scoffs at the redhead's suggestion that it might be a monster, while Rena wonders if it's a skeleton. No Name then bids them to leave as he has taken over the dungeon, prompting the knight to agree while sensing that his opponent has a higher level than himself. As the knight tells the women they should leave, Rena lashes out at No Name for seizing the dungeon and for his manners in not removing his helmet, telling him to surrender his loot or else face the knight. The latter, besotted with Rena, tells No Name to reveal his face, and a smirking Rena muses to herself on taking his stuff too, before all 3 are frozen in shock at finding out he's a skeleton. No Name tells them to leave, and while the redhead realizes that he might not be an average skeleton, the knight dismisses this, and, despite No Name's advice not to, prepares to fight. Trying to show off, he attempts to strike No Name with his blessed morning star, but the latter, having warned them to leave, slices his hands off before he can deliver the blow. Rena is enthralled. As the knight groans in pain, the redhead attempts to flee, before Rena kills her in cold blood with a throwing blade. No Name, believing he was the intended recipient, prepares to fight Rena before the latter asks to be spared. She introduces herself as a member of the T&T Guild, a thieves guild carrying out assassinations, thefts, and information gathering, and she offers her services to No Name. She states that the redhead was her intended target since it would be troublesome for No Name if she got away, and she saved him the trouble of dealing with that woman. No Name, who was not planning on killing the redhead, asks Rena the reason for killing her colleague, to which she replies that she believes he cannot be killed through trickery and that she was her target. No Name then tells Rena to leave and refuses her offer of services, until he recalls that she also deals in information. He asks her about the Necron Society. Rena, glowing at the chance, states that she knows about them and will share the information on one condition, causing No Name to draw his sword. Rena, however, retorts that he would find it hard to find out what she knows without being from the guild, and the guild would not sell it to a skeleton, implying that killing her would prevent him from getting the information he needs. As No Name sheaths his sword, Rena states her condition is that he make her his ally, causing a quest window to pop up detailing the scenario. It presents the perks and warnings of trying to appoint Rena as branch manager of the T&T Guild. No Name thinks on how he still doesn't understand the meaning of these windows or assimilation percentage, but he still needs information. Rina keeps trying to persuade No Name, suggesting she might help with his training, before he lifts her by the neck, pointing out how easily she killed a fellow human and that he doesn't wish to be backstabbed himself. She then screams that she's more like him, and, released, states that humans are only interested in her body, not who she is inside. And they don't think of her as a human, just as they see No Name as a monster who needs to be slain, implying that they're in the same boat. Rina then explains that the Necron Society is a massive shadow syndicate, involved in drugs, contract killing, human trafficking, and other lucrative, illegal activities. It is also backed by several lords and powerful individuals in the Empire, though no one knows where their headquarters are or who leads them. Any further information is reserved to high-ranking guild members. Rina then proposes to bring her targets to No Name's dungeon so he can earn sufficient experience. In exchange, she will rise in the guild and be able to deliver information No Name desires. Hesitant, No Name asks her again if she won't hesitate in helping him kill humans. She confirms, stating that she hates them. He then agrees to the deal. An alert window informs that 3 intruders have appeared in the dungeon. No Name easily dispatches one of them and Rina assassinates the second, before the third kicks her to the ground. Before the third intruder can deliver the killing blow, No Name saves her. After the encounter, No Name's dungeon affinity rises to 19% and his swordsmanship reaches level 4. After months of doing this, his rate of leveling has slowed down. As he considers moving to a new dungeon, a delighted Rina shows him the loot they gathered from all the people they lured. Noting his uneasiness at her eagerness to kill humans, she points out that since the people she gets contracts for are criminals, she gets little money from this, while the criminals avoid getting punished for their many crimes through bribery, and they all deserve to die. No Name notes the books the criminals carried, picking up a volume titled The Unsightly Mage. He starts reading that mages must possess an innate ability to cast magic, and though they enjoy great privilege, they have no responsibility. He wonders if the writer has a grudge against mages, and upon reading his name, Kevin Ashton, out loud, a blue window pops up informing him that his wisdom has risen by 1 point, much to his surprise. He then rummages through the other books, noting that a second book written by the same author also raised his wisdom when he read it. Meanwhile, Rina had been getting ever closer, making him uncomfortable. Having observed him, she offers to find more books for him in the village, but No Name asks her about the closest dungeons instead. As she recalls, there's 1 E-class, 1 D-class, and 2 C-class dungeons within a week's travel on foot. No Name thinks that since the current dungeon is an F-class, an E-class dungeon would be a good next step. He then notices that Rina has fallen asleep on his lap, and as he's about to resume his swordsmanship training, he suddenly feels tired and falls asleep himself. A blue window then pops up. Having spent 182 nights in the dungeon, his dungeon affinity is 20%. He is succumbing to his human nature, and the dungeon is trying to devour him. As No Name opens his eyes, he sees his deceased mistress Succubus, who asks him if he had a good dream, apologizing for waking him up. A shocked No Name jumps to his feet and realizes that he has no armor, being embraced by Succubus. She points out he must have had a nightmare, asking what story she should tell. A relieved No Name reassures himself and thinks that they will live in the dungeon happily for a long time as he is dragged by the hallucination deeper into the caves. Rina wakes